Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil and the world since 2009, and now in podcast format. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American living in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, and talking from my podcast studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. And we're going to talk about business between India and Brazil. Today's guest is Avishek Nigam, and he's talking with us today from Bangalore, India. Avishek Nigam is CEO at Adhrit Solutions with operations in Brazil and India. He was member of the Advisory Council of the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce and also was a member of the Consultive Board of the World Trade Center in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Avishek and I met several years ago at an American Chamber of Commerce event in Belo Horizonte, and I had the opportunity to interview him on Talk to Brazil several years ago. So with that, hello, Avishek, and welcome again to Talk to Brazil.
Hello, Tom. It's always a pleasure. Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to you. I want to prime our audience because one of the things, when we first met, actually, you impressed me. Obviously, being an Indian business person in Brazil, having studied and lived and worked in Brazil for a while, you have a unique focus on the cultures, Brazilian cultures and the Indian cultures, but also from the prospect of and perspective of business and networking. So what I'd like to have you share with our listeners today is an update, because I know you've been back and forth continually between Brazil and India. From the time we first spoke several years ago, there is and there has been business interest and opportunities, but that seems to have grown more recently. And I'd like you to talk about that, of where you see opportunities between the countries, okay?
Okay. Tom, I believe that I had a unique perspective in growing up in Brazil, because when I was just 1 year old, my parents moved to Brazil. So that gave me an opportunity to grow up in Brazil with the Indian origin, and having to grow up in Brazil where there was literally almost no connection to India made it very tough for the Brazilians to understand who I actually was. And I grew up in a city which was in northeast of Brazil, which people rarely would see anyone from the Indian community. So they were sometimes even confused that I was, no, you're not Indian, you might be native Indian. So that's how far we have gone from that to today. And growing up in Brazil, we have seen how the Brazilians are, how they deal with the business. And except for a few years that I lived in the U.S., most of my education was in Brazil, and started off in the IT sector in Brazil in big multinational companies, until to a point that I was nominated to be a president of a Brazilian company here in India, and to take up that challenge that was around 10, 15 years ago. And I took up that challenge, and that was very interesting to, as a Brazilian, but with Indian origin, to come to India, establish an IT company here for a multinational Brazilian company. Gave me some highlights of what India was doing to the world, especially in IT services. Right. But moreover, the difference in culture in terms of working and in terms of results-oriented system that the Indians had, which could benefit a lot of the Brazilian culture, which is more focused on what the client wants instead of what the company's results want.
Right.
So I think there's a good balance of what could happen, and I tried to do that. And that's how we came up with our company, Adhrit Solutions, to leverage the IT potential for both countries.
And that's still real. And I think one of the advantages we talked today in 2020, where everything has become virtual, years ago, that segment that you were involved with actually started, and it was virtual. So you said the outsourcing, the offshore sourcing was a way of doing business many years ago. And where you didn't have to have a physical presence. You had to have connectivity, really, to develop products, to solve problem solutions. So I think that was unique years ago.
That's right. And it's still, we were hoping, and that has been a huge challenge in the IT world, to convince companies that resources could work remotely, that resources could work even from home, if possible, because the technology was there. Now, and this is the one, probably the most interesting aspect of the lockdown that we have faced throughout these last few months, is that the mindset of working from home, of having resources work effectively from home or wherever locations they can be, has pushed the mindset to the next 5 years. I mean, we were hoping that the next 5 years will be at the stage that we are today, where people are more comfortable now of working from home, and businesses are okay with it now because we were forced to. So the mindset and the technology corresponded.
That's true.
And that's a huge benefit. And
we've become accustomed now recently to really say working from home. But what I think the more correct term is to working remotely, and that can be anywhere. Right now, this conversation, this podcast, I'm interviewing you through my smartphone, through a WhatsApp connection, and you can be anywhere. I don't know where you are, right? And no, seriously, and I don't really need to know where you are. I need to know because of a time zone so we can line up the time. But you could be anywhere, and I could be anywhere. So we don't necessarily have to be somewhere. And I think that's a challenge that everybody's overcoming right now. And the moment of saying, I'm home working, there's all the complications of being at home. But you can be outside in your car. You could be out sitting in your backyard. You can be somewhere, and we need connectivity. So I think the secret of the future, the present, is connectivity. You don't have to be anywhere.
And Tom, I would like also to add that if you can be anywhere, you may choose not to live in a big city, go to a smaller, more pleasant place that you would prefer, because you're no longer required to go to an office. You can be, for example, Brazil has beautiful beaches, smaller cities, which are very, very pleasant. And I have seen here, most of my staff here in India during this lockdown, they have gone to their parents' house, visit them, stay there with them, because they no longer required to come to the office. Right. And the work from home culture gives you the freedom. Or work from, like you said, remotely, gives you the freedom to be anywhere. I had one of my employees. He was visiting his girlfriend in Indonesia, and he got stuck there. He was supposed to come in March, but there are no flights, so he's there still.
Well, the word might not be stuck, right? It might be. He was happy to be there and not have flights, so that could be another way of.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. he got sprained, and but in a nice situation in a beach somewhere in Indonesia with his girlfriend and working normally for us. So there is no. This is the kind of thing that we take a little bit of humor, but gives us an opportunity to think that businesses no longer need whole floor buildings, floors in buildings to show and introduce And the number of people leaving the city,
right,
if they're able to go to a smaller, more pleasant place.
Well, to be fair, when we first met in 2011, and we're talking about connectivity, all right, really here in Brazil at that time, you had to be present somewhere. Because the internet connection, the communications connections were centralized either in larger cities and many times in commercial buildings. So really you didn't have access to the connectivity at that time. Today, that's different. And I think that also is a tool that's helped from what you just said, of if we're connected, you just need to be connected. As the world evolves now to 5G, with speeds and accesses, so really it's anywhere. Like today, right now, it's 9:30 a.m. in Campinas, and we're coming on 6 p.m. in India, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
Previously, having to be physically in an office also, and that was the connectivity point, also limited business because you had to be physically present to be in touch. And that was depending on the time the office was open. The world is 24/7. The world isn't, 9 to 5 in Brazil or 9 to 5 in India. It's 24/7 all the time. So the connectivity and the remote aspect, I feel, even from what I'm doing, it opens up a whole new avenue of opportunities of doing business.
I think we are going to see more and more businesses who focus on online services, online products, on which will rely on this connectivity. We have seen the upgrowth of entertainment platforms, of communication platforms, and also we have seen on delivery platforms. Mm-hmm. These are all things that allow you to do everything that you require from any location, anywhere in the world. I believe now that we no longer need not only a physical presence in the office, but we don't need anything from the office beyond, let's say, the connectivity. And if that is also given from any location, no one now requires a computer. Everybody has a computer. Everybody has their own means to do their work. They only require safety, security, and good connectivity to the tools that an office might give you. Mm-hmm. And that's available too.
Right.
So our mindset has changed, and this may bring a new way of working, less stressful way of working, I believe, and a more pleasant way of life. I think this is what we should be focusing on, because most of the things that are not repeatable, they will be done by professionals,
right,
and they will be required to be done by professionals. But most of other things which can be repeated, we can put bots into it. Mm-hmm. We can put artificial intelligence towards it,
right,
and we no longer require those services to be done by humans. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is very, very important for us to change the mindset,
right,
and it will change slowly. But again, this lockdown has given us a perspective of what the world will end up being if everyone has a choice of working remotely.
Well, you've developed that, and again, when we first met, and you as a CEO of your own company, but even back when you went to India to start a company, you created the mindset of being multicultural and being multi-time zone. Because you were at the same time working when you were in India in the Indian time zone and culture, and at the same time dealing with a Brazilian company and a Brazilian culture and a Brazilian time zone. So really you had to extend your day to compensate for two time zones. Because right now we're saying it's 9:30 in the morning. Many of your clients in Brazil today are finishing breakfast and starting to work, and you're going home to dinner. Or you may be home having dinner.
Yes, that's right. I'll tell you one experience I used to have when I started the company here for a Brazilian company in 2007. This multinational company, it was the first time they had an operation in India, which is 8.5 hours ahead of the Brazilian time. And usually they used to call the office to talk to me. Some of the members used to call the office to talk to me. And you know how it goes in the morning. You go to the office, you start attending to your emergency needs, and then you have time to contact other people.
Right.
And they used to call me around 1, 2, or after lunch,
right,
when I was no longer in the office.
Right.
And at that time, you wouldn't have the connectivity that we have today. And they always used to complain, whenever I call the office, no one picks up. So it was like 9:30 p.m., 10 p.m. in the night. Nobody picks up there. So that's one thing that we used to tell them. Why are you never in the office? Are you always in the client side? I said, guys.
No, but what I just said, you need to practice that. You have to be aware of that. And that's for anybody. It's not only for Brazilians. If you don't create or haven't had the opportunity to create a global mindset, you're not really aware of time differences, of time zones. Until actually,
that's
like what
right.
you said, you pick up the phone because you've been talking, say in Brazil, you could be in São Paulo and you want to call somebody in Paraíba, and you pick up the phone and you talk. And that's been your life. And what you just said is true. If you want to talk to somebody in Chile or somebody in England or somebody in India, it's all different. When I learned years ago, because at that time I worked in an international situation, I had to be aware of what time it was anywhere. Because years ago, when it was the phone call, if somebody called me from Europe, I was on my way to São Paulo at 8 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, the cell phone was a big thing that looked like a brick that would ring. And if it was somebody from either England or Germany, I already knew that they knew something that I didn't know. If they were calling me, they had news that I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, it was 11 in the morning or 12. They were having their lunch, and half of the day already started. And I was on my way to work. So if they called me, I said, they know something that I don't, right? And it was normally true. You know, that I was working with aluminum, and the aluminum price either went up or went down. So today, the connectivity and the access to information has also become homogenized. So before our telephones ring, right, before we get our WhatsApp message, we have access to what's happened in the world or what's happening right now in the world. So I think that's been a change. Everybody has access to the same information at the same time, whether you're awake or not, but it's there.
That's right. That's right. It has become so easy to do certain things. And that's where we have to optimize the quality of life as well. Mm-hmm. I keep on saying to all my employees, watch out for the distractions.
Right.
I mean, focus on what you have to do, because nowadays it's so easy to get distracted. Mm-hmm. And our mind needs a little bit of isolation in terms of the distraction. So don't pick up all the phone unless you have to, or don't go into responding immediately unless you have to. Mm-hmm. Just take it easy. Set your goals for the day and your activities. It's not just time management, but mostly you should have a dedicated time for your work without interruption, and also for yourself.
Right.
I mean, you should disconnect, and this is one thing that I advise everyone, even friends and business colleagues. Take a time to do some your own meditation or your own process thinking,
right?
But in silence. I mean, so many distractions. Just keep at least 10, 20, 30 minutes time just to think what you're doing and focus in that,
right.
And give a break from the whole system.
Right.
Here in India, I learned a little bit of meditation, and whoa, boy, my headaches are gone. The constant thinking on what's happening on the business has come to a more focused manner. I believe we really need this downtime in the mind.
Right.
It's just like when you reboot the system in the computer. It requires to delete all those sub-processes that always are there. So you restart, reboot. It really makes a difference.
It does. I agree with you. I think you're right on that, because otherwise, the mind, obviously, the body nor the mind was made to work 24/7. It's the relaxed time. It's that mind readjustment time that is important. And unfortunately, what we see now, people burning out or depressed or anxious and all these other things happening, because what you just said, we do need time just to be, it's the quiet time. And I think that's important. But back to our business, Avishek. You've been back and forth. You've seen that. What is the outlook? Do you see, from your perspective, are Indian business companies and persons, do they see Brazil as an opportunity for business?
This is a very good question and very tough to respond. There are certain areas that, yes, they are looking to Brazil and they're serious about it. I have seen companies who are reaching out to international markets, so Indian companies. And it's not a natural thing to go and seek out Brazil in their top 10 countries to reach out once they're moving internationally. They usually think of European markets, American market, or even the countries around India where they could do, such as UAE, Qatar. These are countries that naturally they have access through, and mostly because they have someone that they know or they trust that are on those countries. And that makes it an easy step to take their products or solutions to those countries. And they see the benefit. I mean, they see the benefit of a strong U.S. market or European market, which gives them opportunity to show off their products.
Right.
However, Brazil has now picked up, has, better said, come into the radar because of what Brazil has become. Brazil has been growing, has become an excellent opportunity, not only for Indians, but all over businessmen who seek to understand this new place where people are highly connected, where people are dynamic, young, and a huge opportunity to consume their products or solutions. And that's where I see an opportunity for Indians to go to Brazil and Brazilians to come to India, because as emerging markets, they both have similar needs.
Right.
When I say that, I mean it is a solution that's implemented, let's say, in Brazil and works for the Brazilian community is more relatable to a country like India, which is passing through the same phases.
Right.
It might not be as easy to go to a mature market like US and Europe, which they may have not even the need of that product or services because they're at another stage of requirements. Right. So it's easier for them to come to India, where they see young people as well. They see the similar needs of an emerging market, of how to build up their services and products. I think this is the best thing that you could do. If your solution is already working in Brazil, it's more likely to work better in India or easier to adapt to India than to US, probably. That is because of the mindset of these two countries. They're emerging markets, and they have similar challenges, which are different challenges for a mature market. So it could be a natural thing to go and test it in Brazil, test it in India. And that's what I have been saying to entrepreneurs. You should consider, because your solution is more likely to work out better in a country that has similar challenges.
Right. So
this is where I try to focus. And besides this, there are excellent markets. It's a billion plus people here in India, 200 and plus million people in Brazil. And that's considerable. And Brazil being the biggest market in Latin America for almost any product or service is the first market to go to in Latin America.
Yeah, and I think, too, Brazil has the advantage looking towards, obviously, Indian business persons. But anyway, we're talking 200 million plus. It's 200 million plus within the same language. Obviously, there are geographical and regional differences culturally within Brazil because it is a continental-sized country. But you can adjust one language and reach many people. The other side, as you know, you have in India 1 billion people, but within regions you can have 200 million in one language. So you have equivalent sizes of markets and adjusting, as you said, to the emerging situations. There's advantages on both sides. Now, at the beginning of this year, the Brazilian president and a delegation did go to India, and you mentioned offline that you were part of the reception. How did that go? How do you see that happening and the reflexes of that to business between Brazil and India?
Yes. Well, every year there is a parade in India for the independence of India. So it's a national holiday on January 26th. And there's always one chief guest. That means only one chief guest. There are no other statesperson invited. And India had invited the president of Brazil, Mr. Jair Bolsonaro, and he was invited to be the chief honored guest on the Independence Day, on the parade itself. And with him, he accepted, and he came with a full delegation from Brazil. And of course, we were honored to be there to receive him, and it was fantastic to see a lot of not only the president himself, but many of his ministers were here as well. So science, technology, health at the time, I believe, and other secretaries. So a lot of the major government officials were here, and they established their links not only for one day, but they came in advance. They sent their people 2 weeks in advance to prepare for several meetings before the date of 26 Jan. So what ended up happening, we had a full week prior to 26 Jan of activities. And we are talking about here agribusiness, we are talking about IT services, we are talking about all types of different possibilities where the Indian government also sent in and sat with all these different secretaries to establish strategies. And at that same time, all the entrepreneurs were invited. So this I had never seen before. Usually when you have a delegation, they come just for 1-2 days and they leave.
Right.
And during those 1-2 days, you would have activities. And it used to be more like an exploratory mission. Okay, what can we do?
Right.
That wasn't the case here. Here, people came prepared. They knew what the Indian market was. They knew how they wanted to do business. They just wanted to meet people to establish and execute what they wanted. So it was much further than exploratory. It was intentionally prepared for establishing their network communication and seeing when they can start doing some of the programs that were successful in Brazil that could be successful in India. One big example I saw in the ethanol space in Brazil, and this was we know the huge success of ethanol, especially the cars run by ethanol in Brazil. Before, the focus was, see, we have this technology, you should use it because ethanol is a much easier, more friendly, environmentally friendly commodity that you could use to run your cars. Right. But this is true, obviously. However, this time the focus was something new, was saying, see, because of ethanol, Brazilian pollution decreased in 40-50%.
That's true.
Because of the carbon emissions. So they showed a picture of São Paulo, which I think was in the 80s.
Right.
Highly polluted. And then they showed in 2000 and the clear skies. And they said, you know why you can see this? We have more cars today than we had in the 80s.
That's true.
But because of our ethanol, you can't see the pollution anymore.
That's true.
It's clear. And New Delhi is the most polluted city in the world today. So they said, if you can, we can help you do the blend mix. We can help you explain how we did it. And the main concerns for the Indians were, how did you implement it in a governmental level? How did you motivate people to change their cars to having this, or motivate the market to make it mandatory that now you should run in a higher mix of ethanol with gasoline? So these were the questions. It's no longer exploratory. It is to the spot, the problems and the solutions that we require. And this is one example of several that I have seen and I can share. And in IT, it's unbelievable. People came here, said, I'm here looking for business in IT because you guys have done this. You guys have worked with this AI technology. I would like to implement it here. Right. And there are very good solutions coming from both countries, from Brazil, from India. And I think it's just a matter of time that we establish this as a real connection in terms of business platform.
Well, I think that's important what you said previously about the Indian business expansion to other parts of the world. You used two words that are important. One is trust, and the other was knowing someone, right? And I think that's valid for any business. So having these types of visits and interactions at governmental levels, at the business person levels, all of this what you just mentioned, it does take time, but it starts developing the trust level. It also, in terms of networking, it develops the knowing someone level because it's still a people-to-people business, right? And you know that better than I do. You've been back and forth so many times. You understanding the culture is one thing, but knowing which people you can count on, which people to talk to, and which people obviously you can trust, that's the secret to any business. And it's really no secret, right? You just have to establish that and work on it, and it takes time.
Oh, yes, it does take time to know your ins and outs of a country. That's for sure. So the first recommendation is to find someone who has already passed that time, doing the hard, nitty-gritty work, and avail their experience. You don't want to spend another 2-3 years just to understand what you could be doing and how you should be doing. Just get someone who is ready.
And you're ready. Now you're even meditating, so that's even better. What I do want to say, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time, but I want to thank you again. And as I mentioned, you are a unique person. You have a unique background and a certainly even more unique understanding of two unique cultures. And you've been able to be successful in both countries, in both cultures, and with many different people. And I want to thank you again for coming back on Talk to Brazil. And I still remember to the day that we met in Belo Horizonte, and you were part of a networking meeting that we had there. So some relationships take time, other relations are immediate, but they are lasting, they're trustworthy, and you need to know people everywhere.
That's right, Tom. It's my pleasure. It was always a pleasure to meet you. And you, as King of Network, it's always good to connect with you and get your perspective on things as well.
Well, we're going to be talking, and we're going to be back having more conversations like this, because I would like to expand on other areas that you just mentioned. And in our future podcast, we'll be dealing more specifically in different sectors of business, really to see how we can help companies and persons generate more business between Brazil and India. How's that? That's
perfect. That's absolutely fine.
Very good. Well, thank you. Now I'll let you back to your meditation, and I'll have to start talking to somebody somewhere, but we'll be back in touch. And I do want to thank you again for sharing your time with our listeners, okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom, and it's always been a pleasure. Good day for you.
Thank you. And for our listeners, I want you to know that you can find more about Avishek Nigam on LinkedIn, and his name is Avishek, and the last name is Nigam, Avishek Nigam, or on his site, which is adritsolutions.com, and that's ADRITSOLUTIONS.com, Adhrit Solutions. I'd like to thank you, our audience, and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them on their site, which is FOCUSMI.com. So that's FocusMI.com. Or on our website, TalkToBrazil.com, you can find previous shows of Talk to Brazil, which are also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.